a better world for children and nature. I might say that again. School Beanz Children's Garden. Let's create a better world for children and nature. Thank you so much for signing up to watch tonight. It's quite heartwarming to see how many people are interested in children's gardening and setting up a children's garden. I'm going to talk about how I got into gardening because it's quite important into how I focused on gardening with children. And let's begin. Cool. So, Skool Beanz is a children's gardening club for children aged 4 to 13, run from our very own no-dig children's allotment in the village of Chilthondoma. So it's the village that I live in South Somerset, just outside of Yeovil here in the UK. We teach the children how to grow delicious vegetables, beautiful cut flowers, and how to garden to help nature. And we do loads of upcycled arts and crafts. And most importantly, the main objective in everything we do is that the children have fun. It's all about creating happy gardening childhood memories. So why am I so passionate about teaching gardening to children? Well, it all began just over 10 years ago. The RHS kindly featured my gardening story, and my gardening story is, so just over 10 years ago, I, age 31, was diagnosed with breast cancer. So I was living in London, trying to make it as an actor, and my life was a bit of a roller coaster. So one minute I would be filming a commercial with Rick Mail for the Bombardier adverts. The next I'd be touring France in an open air show, or I would be temping at Vogue, or temping at a hedge fund. And my life was a bit of a roller coaster, and I never really knew where my next paycheck was coming from. And suddenly I was diagnosed with breast cancer, and it was very aggressive. So I needed chemo, radiotherapy, and surgery to remove the cancer. And I found this online group of young women going through breast cancer as well. And we supported each other. And halfway through my treatment, 5 ladies that I'd made friends with sadly passed away in the space of 2 weeks. And they all had the same type of breast cancer as me, so triple negative. It means that you can't have hormone therapy. It doesn't have any effect. And one of the ladies had been given the all clear. So, but 3 months later, a headache started, and unfortunately her cancer had spread and she sadly died. So in the back of my mind, I was going through this treatment and I thought, am I going to survive? I don't know if I'm going to survive another year. And that had a huge effect on me. And 3 days after I was diagnosed, I accidentally got a puppy. This is Edward. And the reason I got Edward, so when you find out you have cancer, you do crazy things like buy someone a puppy for their birthday. So I had a friend who'd always wanted a dog. So it was his birthday. My friend's mum had a litter of puppies. I thought, I'm going to buy him a puppy. He freaked out and was like, I can't have 15 years commitment. It's very kind of you, but I can't keep him. So I was like, okay, I'll keep the puppy. I was living on my own in a flat in South London, and it was the best thing that could have happened to me because this little puppy needed walking every day. So even if I was feeling really rough from the chemo, I needed to walk this little dog. So I'd walk him through the parks in Peckham, and suddenly, looking up at the trees and the grass and the plants, I was like, oh, that's making me feel so much better. And I have been taking nature for granted my entire life. So I grew up on the edge of Ashdown Forest, and I thought everybody had a 1,000-acre Winnie the Pooh forest on their doorstep. And so suddenly realizing how important nature was, that also set me on a different path. And I wrote a blog all about my breast cancer experience because I constantly had friends and family asking how I was. And my friends shared it around this blog. It was a funny take on cancer. And this lovely man called Mikey contacted me. He was a friend of a friend, and he said, I've been reading your blog. I have cystic fibrosis. He was in and out of hospital very poorly. And he also had a puppy exactly the same age as Edward. So his dog is Oscar. They're 3 weeks apart in age. And we fell in love. And I was obsessed with the sea throughout my treatment. I wanted to just drive to the sea. I'd get up early in the morning. And Mikey lived by the sea in Brighton. So as soon as my treatment finished in London, I moved in with Mikey by the sea. I didn't want to be in the city anymore. And got to Brighton, and I felt I had been so well looked after by the NHS. I'd had such a good experience and so well looked after by my friends and family. It was almost like I experienced post-traumatic growth. And I was so ready to hit the ground running and give back, just like they'd looked after me. I was ready to give something back. And it just so happened my friend was helping with this project, and they needed someone to run it. And it was with a group of unemployed people who hadn't worked for up to 10 years, and they were expected to go to the job agency every week, apply for jobs. Some of them hadn't worked for that long. And if they had a job interview, they would say, well, you haven't worked for 10 years. What have you been doing? So this project was going to work on outdoor projects that would benefit the community so that the group could learn new skills, make new friends, it would boost their confidence, and most importantly, they would have fun. And on the first day, they came up with the name Brightening Lives, which I thought was very good, considering we were in Brighton. And we would work together. We work closely with Brighton Permaculture Trust on projects like this. So it was Race Hill Community Orchard. So the Brighton Permaculture Trust looked after a lot of community orchards, and we would work together as a group and do things like create a path to make it accessible for more people. And we would do that in the space of a few hours. We would help there was a local primary school that had a forest garden, and we would help tend the garden. And I noticed such a transformation in the group in the space of a few months. And I remember thinking, God, there's really something in this. And I remember Googling therapeutic horticulture and discovering it was an actual recognized thing. And so I was just buzzing. I kind of was finding my purpose. Meanwhile, sadly, Mikey's health was deteriorating, so much so that he was then listed for a double lung transplant. And we got married, and we decided to move to Somerset to be close to his family so that we could take it in turns to take him to hospital, which was over an hour away. And when I found out we were moving to Somerset, I was like, oh my goodness, I don't know anyone in Somerset. It's the middle of nowhere in Yeovil. What am I going to do? And Mikey said, pull yourself together and enroll on a horticultural course. And I thought, okay, so I'm interested in social and therapeutic horticulture. Maybe I want to do a diploma in that. And they said, get some horticultural experience. So I signed up for an RHS level 2, the practical, which was brilliant because it taught me all about sowing seeds and propagating and all the basics. And I made lots of plant friends. And one of my friends got me a job at Longacre Plants for Shade. So this was great, working in a plant nursery, learning about plants that love shade. And it was there that I was watering these hostas and noticed this droplet of water on the leaf. And it stopped me in my tracks. And I thought, oh my goodness, there we are mining for diamonds and destroying this planet, and something as beautiful as a droplet on a leaf is all we need. And it was almost like a voice came to me and said, nature is the answer to everything. She is our teacher, our healer, our food, our medicine, our shelter. She is the answer to everything. So that was another pivotal moment. And I wanted to learn as much as possible. So flowers, vegetables, and a friend said, oh, I've got this email address of a guy that grows vegetables. Maybe you should contact him. And I wrote to him and I said, I'm really interested in growing veg. I don't really know what I'm doing, but I'm enthusiastic and very keen. And he said, oh, that's all you need. You can start on Friday. And I rocked up at Charles Dowding's garden, Homemakers. So this was in 2017. I didn't know who Charles was. And when I arrived at his garden, I was just walking around with my mouth wide open. I was like, this is not real. It's like something out of a children's storybook. And the cabbages were the size of baby elephants. The kale seemed to be waving at me. It was like they had personalities, and the Brussels sprouts were dancing. And walking around, when I saw this vegetable, I was like, that is not real. And he was like, yes, it is. It's a kohlrabi. And I was like, but it looks like something from outer space with like antennas. So from then on, I was hooked on growing veg. And the children, yeah, we call it a kohlrabi now. And Charles, I'm so lucky to call him a friend. He's the most wonderful teacher and mentor. If I ever had any ideas, he's always like, yes, how should we make them happen? And he teaches me to be the teacher that I want to be to the children. So his passion and enthusiasm is infectious, and that's what I want to pass on to the children. And so working for Charles for two summers, and in 2018, uh, August 2018, so Mikey, my husband, had a successful double lung transplant after waiting 3 false alarms, and he's thriving today, touch wood. And a month later, I started the 1-year diploma in social and therapeutic horticulture. And it used to be with Coventry University, now it is with Thrive. And social and therapeutic horticulture is the process of using plants and gardens to improve physical and mental health, as well as communication and thinking skills. So basically gardening activities to help improve people's well-being. And this course was really interesting because you could specialize. It taught you, you could focus on adults, elderly people with dementia, or veterans suffering from PTSD. And I thought, oh, maybe I want to work in prisons because I love the idea of people, transforming, reform, after doing Brightening Lives. I loved helping people transform their lives. And then Greta Thunberg was all over the news. And she inspired me so much. I thought, gosh, this little girl is speaking more sense than most adults around the world. And she started this Fridays for Futures movement, and these children were speaking so much sense. And I thought, gosh, I really want to do something, but I don't feel like I'm very political. But I do know how to garden, and maybe I could teach children how to garden. And with statistics like the UK, with just half of its biodiversity remaining, is one of the most nature depleted countries in the world. And sadly, the statistics now is 1 in 5 children and young people have a diagnosable mental health problem. It made me suddenly realize that the more we destroy nature and the less time we spend in nature, so the more we spend on our devices, and the worse our physical and mental well-being is. And then I thought, if I teach children how to garden, not only is it going to improve their physical and mental well-being, it's going to help our precious nature too. It's this win-win. It's this beautiful symbiotic relationship between children and nature. They both need our help. They can help each other. And on my course, we learned about biophilia. So it's this hypothesis that we are born with this innate connection to nature. It's in our DNA from when we were hunter-gatherers. And it's up to us adults to create these environments that continue to nurture this connection with nature. So children need these safe environments to continue this. So this set me on my mission. And in the same month that I finished my diploma, I contacted the headmistress in my local primary school in my village and said, could I start volunteering running an after school Friday gardening club? And she said, yep. And so started the club. And it was really interesting. I was realizing that I was using all the skills that I had learned from running Brightening Lives with this group of unemployed people, because that main objective is that they have fun. and they both had short attention spans. You know, children have got short attention spans, and so had this group in Brighton. And so yeah, I realized I was using the skills that I had learned, and it was going from strength to strength. And then March 2020, COVID lockdown begins, and Mikey, my husband, we had to go into strict lockdown. So I decided to start selling plants on my plant stand outside my house to raise money for when we would restart the gardening club. And then a parish councillor approached me and said, "We really want to get the allotments in our village up and running again." And I was like, "What allotments?" And I had been living in the village for 4 years, walking past this, and I didn't know these were allotments. So there were 10 plots. I thought it was land that the terrace houses opposite owned, but no, they were just allotments that weren't being used. So he was like, "You could have one of them." So this is what it looked like: 30 meters long and 6 meters wide. And it then got me thinking, children's gardens don't officially exist. So if you Google children's gardens, they just don't exist. So the RHS haven't even created a children's learning garden. So at Chelsea Flower Show last year, they had a garden designed by children, but it had a slide and it had a very deep pond. And when people think of children's gardens, they just think of like playgrounds. When you go to the National Trust, they'll do like a treasure hunt or an Easter egg hunt. You have like petting zoos. We have forest schools all over the country, which is wonderful. But why don't we have learning gardens that are designed especially for children, that are really fun and engaging, where children are seeing the whole life cycle of a vegetable, where they can sow the seed and they can nurture and they can pick the veg and they can see that it's designed especially for them. So I was like, right, this is what I'm going to do. And local farmers, I gave me free silage plastic. So we weren't going to use chemicals. So this is how we killed off the grass. I cut everything back by hand, so brambles and raspberry canes, and used my savings to get deliveries of Viridor, the council compost. And this is what it looked like when we'd taken the black plastic off. It had been on for at least 3 months. Just rake the grass so it was still on there, because then we were going to do the no dig method, cover it all in cardboard. The whole village collected cardboard. The dairy farmers tipped free manure over the fence. We spread it all, put a sprinkling of compost on top. And I found these whilst clearing the allotment. I thought was a very good omen for a children's garden. And I basically guilt tripped the village into helping me. So they would see me back and forth in the rain, wheelbarrowing, and it was still during COVID. And so they would come out and we'd be socially distanced and they would kindly help wheelbarrow back and forth. And then we live close to the A303, a dual carriageway, and I saw these tree surgeons chipping the side of the road. So I nipped down there, put my hazard lights on, and they said, "You shouldn't be here," because I cut in, and within an hour they'd delivered this wood chip because they needed to get rid of it. So always make friends with anyone chipping the side of the road. And we put in the wood chip paths. I mean, it looked like a giant religious sort of area, but this is how we did it. And I wanted to do the skeleton of the garden. So this was all done without the children because we were still in lockdown, so that by the time lockdown eased and we started the gardening club, the children could do all the fun stuff, so the planting. And if you see, so those are the little veg beds, and they are child friendly size. So they're kind of the size of small graves. So they're kind of like 1.2 meters long and about half a meter wide. So perfect size for children, because they could plant it all up really quick and they could pick all the veg really quick. So yeah, it works really well. And so this is what it looked like in February 2021. And then this is what it looks like in the summer. So this is August 2023. And these are actually two plots together. So we extended the following year. And I quickly want to veer off piste a sec, because meanwhile, so whilst I was creating the Skool Beanz garden, this was my gardening job 2 days a week, was creating this kitchen garden at a farm nearby, where I started working at the flower farm, Black Marsh Flower Farm, for 3 months. And then the farmer who had this garden said, can you come and turn it into a kitchen garden? And this garden gave me so much confidence to then do what I did at Skool Beanz. So you can see it was grass, and then we put the cardboard, manure and compost, and then this is what it looked like by the end of the summer. And this garden will forever be so special to me because it was the first proper kitchen garden I created, and it gave me the confidence to do Skool Beanz. So right, back to Skool Beanz. So as you can see, there's so much colour because it's a children's garden. So you want it to be magical, like Alice in Wonderland. And I wanted to recreate that magic I felt the first time entering Charles's garden. So you can imagine children, I really want to put a GoPro on a child's head because they're so much shorter. They're seeing the garden so much more intensely than we are because they're really in amongst it. And if you notice, I try and avoid black plastic as much as possible. Obviously, you know, if people can't afford paint, even natural wood is better than plastic. So the only plastic we sort of have are obviously watering cans and our little plant pots and when, trays, but try and avoid the sort of ugly plastic and try and have beauty because it's what children deserve. So this lovely man, Ron Finley, he is in LA. He's a huge inspiration of mine. So he's known as the gangster gardener. And he got into trouble because there was a great grass verge outside his house and he decided to grow a little food forest on it in LA, beautiful sunny weather. He grew, banana trees and all these beautiful edible plants. And he got taken to court because it was council land and he was vandalizing it and he said my neighbors dump an old mattress and their bags of rubbish on the verge and you don't tell them off. Anyway, he got loads of press coverage and it got completely quashed, and then he decided to buy this disused swimming pool and turn it into a community garden, and I think he lives there as well. But I just love the color and he collaborates with local artists, and so he was my main inspiration other than Greta. And so at the moment, this is Skool Beanz. So it's two plots together. So it measures 12 meters by 30 meters, but we are expanding. We're actually doubling in size this year. So Skool Beanz, so we started the first club April 2021, Saturday morning, 10 till 12, with 4 children. And by the end of that first year, it had 18 children coming, and it was just every Saturday. My diploma, the course, they said never do anything for free, but I didn't charge anything for the first 2 years because I thought I need to learn how to be a good gardening teacher. If they're not paying, they can't complain. So that was kind of my thinking. Now we still do Saturday club every Saturday, mid-February to Christmas, and then we do after school clubs on Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. I teach gardening at the school on a Friday. The after school clubs are sort of 3:30 till 4:30, or Tuesday we do 4:30 till 5:30, and then holiday clubs, so Wednesday and Friday mornings. But with the expansion this year, we want to do full day gardening clubs in the summer holidays. So at the start of our very first sort of Skool Beanz gardening club, we decided, right, we've got to keep the children safe. So they are going to come up with the ground rules to keep everybody safe. So it's like our housekeeping. We go through the rules at the start of every gardening session. Things like, please always walk on the plot because it's not a playground and the children know this from talking about it at the start of every session. So what happens if we run? Well, we could fall over and hurt ourselves, or we could squash a plant. So it's always just walking only. And things like please respect nature and insects. So all insects, even slugs, are welcome on the allotment. Ask before picking or eating a plant. That's quite important. And always stay on the plot for your own safety. So we go through the rules at the start of every session, and that really it sets the tone. And then before the children arrive, I walk around the garden and it tells me what needs to be done. And it's always, obviously, it's seasonal, but I will then write down a list of all the jobs that need to be done. And there's always an art activity on offer, as well as all the gardening jobs. So, because some children don't always feel like gardening and they can just sit and do their art. And we go through the jobs and then they pick and choose what they want to do. And they're like little Oompa Loompas. They'll go off and just get on with it by themselves. And some of the children that have been there longer, they'll help the new children. The taller, older children will help the little ones reach the raspberries, and it's lovely. It works really well. So fruit and veg, like vegetables, are just so exciting. They're just so many wonderful colours and shapes and tastes and smells. And there you can see, so the children are sowing peas in pots and digging for potatoes. I mean, that's like digging for gold. And having the same veg in each bed, it makes it really easy when you're planting a whole bed and then you're picking a whole bed. And it also, the children are identifying the veg with the sign. And I was 34 when I found out what a kohlrabi was, and the children, and they know what a kohlrabi is at age 4. So that's pretty cool. And yeah, like all the different textures of the veg. So cabbage leaves are like elephant's ears, giant marrows. I often say we don't have a problem with mice or pests. We have a problem with children eating all the veg. So you'll literally, at the end of a club, you'll find like nibbled bits of sweet corn, but there is nothing better than sweet corn when it's perfect and you eat it raw and it tastes like sweet milk. It's incredible. And the children gorging on raspberries and crunching carrots. So the best flowers to grow with children in the summer are dahlias, and they pick buckets full. And dahlias are wonderful because even when the dead heads are going a bit scabby, we'll pick them all and then the children turn them into mandalas or snow globes, or we turn them into petal confetti. So the children pick all the petals off, and then at the end of each club we'll walk into the park next door, and then the children throw it over each other. And it's just about, yeah, creating those little moments of joy. So tulips in spring. So we plant over 1,000 tulip bulbs on the allotment. And did you know tulip petals are edible, and they are actually sweet and delicious, but I don't tell the children they're edible because otherwise they'll just pick them all. Uh, so these tulips, when they go over, when they finish flowering, we dig them up, we store them in garage, and then they get planted in the community orchard in November. And then I buy fresh ones the following year. So there's this constant cycle. So the children learn how to garden to help nature. They know that planting lots of brightly coloured pollinator-friendly flowers attracts them. And we love a dead hedge, which make perfect habitats. And the village, we put shout outs to anyone that needs to get rid of branches, and they'll come and dump them at the allotment, and then we lay them in a dead hedge. And that's our Gusgob corner. So we have 17 gooseberry bushes in that. That's an end plot that we have. So explaining no dig to children. So I say to them, if you're sitting eating your breakfast in your kitchen, and suddenly a big giant came up with a big spade and suddenly started smashing up your house with you in it, that's what happens when we dig. So in a teaspoon of healthy soil, there are more living organisms in that teaspoon of soil than there are people on the planet. So there is a whole ecosystem beneath our feet. Imagine it's like the Serengeti, except it's microscopic in the soil. So imagine you have your zebras and your impala and your lions and your vultures. Well, it's exactly the same, but in the soil. And it's this amazing food chain, and all these creatures are eating each other and pooing, eating each other and pooing, and creating beautiful nutrients in the soil. And it all obviously starts with plants in the soil. So the sun comes through their leaves and they literally shoot out sun fuel through their roots, and then that is eaten by the bacteria and the fungi, and then they're eaten by the slightly bigger creatures, so the protozoa. And if you look at these things under a microscope, they look like made up characters. They are incredible. And then those are eaten by nematodes, and you can get vegetarian nematodes and you can get meat-eating nematodes. And then those are eaten by the slightly bigger arthropods, and the shredders, the vegetarians, are the woodlouse. Or you get the meat-eating arthropods, which are the centipede. And obviously we can see those, and the birds would then eat those. So it's this incredible hoop loop. And if we're digging the soil, we are disturbing this life, this ecosystem. And did you know worms could, apparently there's been worm tunnels that have been there for over 20 years. And if we're digging, we're destroying. So we are mimicking nature when we do no dig. So by putting a layer of compost every year, sort of October time, we are mimicking nature. So when the leaves fall off the trees in autumn, they create that lovely humus layer, and we are mimicking it. So by putting a layer of compost, we are feeding all these creatures, especially homemade compost or manure. And yeah, what else was I going to say? There was definitely something. Oh yeah, that's what I was going to say. So nature, you never see in nature a bare dug over field, do you? You never see bare earth in nature. And that's because these creatures, in order to survive, they need plants in the soil. So when you dig over, say you dig over your allotment to get rid of the weeds, what happens? Instantly, that dug over soil, suddenly plants will start growing, because these little creatures are like, help, help, we need food, we need to get back in our cycle. So nature's instant reaction is quick, grow plants. And that's why it will try and heal itself by growing these weeds really quickly. Also, when you dig, you're letting light get to the weed seedlings. So yeah, just don't dig. Obviously you need to dig a hole to plant a tree, but yeah, it is fascinating, and the children do sort of get it. And I also say, like, when we're getting a vegetable bed ready, we don't really use tools. We'll kind of just use our hands. And I say, you know, stroke it like a pony, and they're kind of stroking the soil, and then just say, they know that it's alive. You treat it like you would a dog, you know, you'd feed it and keep it warm, and yeah, they get it. So I showed the children. So this is a soil sample from our he's our lovely neighbour. He's got the plot next door. He's slightly more old school. And so I said to the children, would you like to live in that sort of dry looking soil, or the soil from our allotment? Granted, that is a compost layer on top. And they said, we want to live in the dark soil. And I said, why? And they said, oh, because it's moist and it's like chocolate cake. So you can see soil should never be exposed. So it almost looks a bit concretey. Imagine it's like our skin. So you always want to have that layer of clothing to keep it, just to keep it covered. So use wood chip or manure, or yeah, homemade compost. Never have soil exposed like that, basically. So children's garden must-haves, besides the veg and the flowers, which we've just talked about. So number one, rainwater collecting station. We don't have a water supply on our allotment. So we built this structure. It's got a roof, and these are 1,000 litre water containers that the rain falls into. And the children love this. They'll pull the lever, fill up their watering cans. Number two, polytunnel. This was a game changer when we got our polytunnel. So it's 10 foot by 15 foot. It meant if it rains, we can stay in there. We use it as a classroom. And it's also somewhere where we sow our seedlings. And if you see, we have sliding doors on both ends, and we put an air gap in the top of the doors so that you have a steady flow of of air, because otherwise it can get a bit stagnant. And we grow our seedlings in here, and then in the summer we grow things like cucumbers, obviously, in there, and in the winter we grow our salad in these little raised beds. And polytunnels get a bad rep because they're plastic and ugly. But if you paint the wooden frame and decorate it and fill it with beautiful things, like we make these jam-de-lires, and make sure you clean it. So we clean it with eco washing up liquid every spring, inside and out. And it doesn't have to be ugly. Number 3, quiet wildlife garden. So having a little area where the children, yeah, I say quiet because it tries to encourage them to be quiet, because, you know, there's nature in here. We have a tiny pond, and we also have the secret den in here. So the children love to come and hang out here. This is in a conifer bush. Number 4, compost bays. So this is really important. The children learn all about making compost. And this little girl, she was 6 years old when she came up with the name Muddy Buddy, the name for our compost heap. And we play this game, so how to turn muck into magic. And the children learned that there's things that you don't put in Muddy Buddy, and it's a bit like a lasagna, so how you layer the green waste with the brown waste. And it's just so satisfying. So here's a little boy. He is, yeah, shoveling our homemade, freshly ready to spread on our veg beds. And this is our active compost heap. And it's so good for them, yeah, to see that cycle. Number 5, upcycling. So obviously when you don't have much money, you need to take what you can get. So anything can be turned into a plant pot if you put a hole in the bottom of it. And obviously toilets are great, especially for the king's coronation. You can turn it into a golden throne. And we love little teapot. This is an auricular primula theatre for children, and we use a porcelain drill bit to drill holes in the teapots. And our infamous jam-de-lires, so everyone in the village collects jam jar lids. Bathtubs are amazing. Make friends with your local plumber, because they're free. And the fiberglass bathtubs, we drill holes in the bottom, but the steel one, you don't need to worry because of the plug hole. And we don't even fill it with rubble or anything. We just filled it 3/4 full with heavy clay soil and a layer of compost on top. If you fill it with just compost, it's just going to keep sinking. You could fill it with logs and then fill it with heavy soil and then compost on the top. And then bits of wood we get out of the skip and saw them up and paint, and the children decorate. And our shed, so we have a lovely Ukrainian volunteer, and she painted it in yeah, just as a tribute to what's going on in Ukraine. And scarecrows. So this is Bob John and his girlfriend Barbara, and the children give them a makeover every spring. So those are always clothes that are donated. So top gardening tips to inspire children. Number 1, do an activity where the results are instant. Number 2, activate all the senses. Number 3, let children just be in the garden. And wheelbarrow rides always make the world a better place. So number 1, instant activities. Decorate tin can vases and arrange cut flowers. So instant, and they can take it home. For real small ones, decorating milk cartons, putting holes in the lid, filling it up with water and watering the plants. So oat milk cartons, so you can turn them into mini microgreen planters. So decorate them, put holes in the bottom, and then any of those seeds, sprinkle, grow them on your windowsill, and then you have a salad that you can cut and eat. So these are plant pots around the school playground. So we fill them with tulip bulbs, but if you just put compost on the top, it's a bit boring. So they fill it with violas and pansies. So it instantly looks lovely. And then they turn into this in spring. And we put 100 bulbs in a bathtub or a raised bed. And yeah, they look lovely. And origami seed packets. So literally just a square of paper. Children decorate them with stamps. And then some of the older children, it's quite difficult folding origami seed packets. But if you get the hang of it, and that's instant to take home. So number 2, activate the senses. So podding, we let a lot of peas go over, so the children are crackling the shells and then they're playing with listening to the sound, like the rattle of the peas in the plastic tray. I always encourage them to water each other and the plants in the summer, holding the slimy slugs. And happy hands, so the children know that if you get your hands dirty, there is a special bacteria in the soil that boosts the serotonin in your brain. So it's scientifically proven that it makes you happy. So the children know this. And feeding the birds, that is our daily ritual. So the children, we do this because I hope, when the children grow up and they have their own gardens, that they will continue to feed the birds. Number 3, let children just be in the garden. So I always encourage them to have free time and they can go and let off some steam in the secret den, because I know that they're safe in there, and being in the den, they absolutely love it because it's like a lovely big hug from nature. And some children that come to Skool Beanz, they're not necessarily interested in gardening, and that's absolutely fine. If they're sitting doing their art, and we've got our picnic benches positioned in the centre of the garden, so it's surrounded by all the plants and the veg beds, and just sitting there doing their art, watching what's going on around them, they're learning and it's working its magic. So wheelbarrow rides solve everything. So if you want children to do certain activities, you'll be like, right, I'm going to wheel the plants over there and we're going to plant them, and then you'll get a wheelbarrow ride back. So it's a bit like bribery and it really works. So best vegetable seeds for children to sow. So all the big ones. So if they drop them on the floor, they can find them and carry on planting. I made the mistake the first gardening session I ever ran. I had all these packets of seeds and they ripped them open and the wind was blowing and they just disintegrated in the air. So the children sow all the big ones by themselves. And adults, I encourage adults. So I sow things like broccoli seeds and cauliflowers and kohlrabi. I will individually sow, just like Charles teaches, sow in modules, and then a few weeks later they're nice plug plants. And then I will make little holes with a dibber, and then the children go over and make bigger holes with their dibber, and then I can give them the plug plants and they just pop them in and it works really well. So turn chores into games. So we had a real problem with mare's tail in the first year when we started gardening club at the allotment. And I said, oh, the mare's tail looks like witch's fingers coming out of the ground. So the children got their buckets. I put a timer on for 10 minutes and they had to pull up as many witch's fingers as they could find. And at the end of the 10 minutes, they would get a mark out of 10 for the longest witch's finger, the bushiest, or the most. And at the end of the season, we'd add up their points, and then the person with the most points would win a secret prize. And we don't have a problem with mare's tail anymore. And I wouldn't get the children to weed anything because they would most likely rip up seedlings. So I don't do any boring jobs with the children. It's about having fun. It's like you want to hook them in and keep them there. So they do all the fun stuff like picking veg and planting veg and eating veg and watering and doing lots of art and playing games. And the boring jobs like the weeding, and like this morning, we pruned 17 gooseberry bushes. That was with my group of volunteers, which I'll talk about in a minute. So yeah, children don't do the boring jobs. We tried doing pricking out with children, and I think they lasted about a minute. So yeah, that's fine though. We'll just do the fun stuff with the children. So snail racing and slug hunts. So if you want to find a snail, you got to think like a snail. And they put a little sticker on their snail. We normally give the snail a little drink first, and then the first snail to leave the circle is the winner. The children know, though, that they are not toys and they have to be very gentle with them. And when they're finished with them, they take the sticker off and they put them back in Muddy Buddy. Things like slug hunts, we had, like a lot of people, had a serious problem with slugs last year. So it was a bit like an Easter egg hunt. The children had a bucket. I timed them and they had to find as many slugs as they could. We did it for 10 minutes and then they wanted to carry on, and the children ended up doing it for the whole hour of the after school club. And so I was like, fine. And then all the slugs at the end, I actually go and set them free in a field nearby. I can't bring myself to kill them. We have a plant stand at the front of our allotment. So when the children pick all the veg, they then go and put it on the plant stand. And then at the end of the session, they share it to take home. And then any spares, we've got our honesty tin that locals can come and help themselves to. So we have a lovely community orchard. So from my experience back in Brighton with Brighton Permaculture Trust, I love orchards so much. And this was an area, it looked like this. So this is, so we have the Skool Beanz allotment, then a little playground park, and then this area. So this is what it looked like. It took me 6 months of going to the parish council meeting to get permission to have an orchard. And then Thatcher's, our local cider company, they give away community orchards every year. So we applied and we got awarded 10 apple trees. So we had eating, cider and cooking apples. And this is what it looks like. It looked like last spring. And so we mow a path and we plant all our tulips and daffodils in there. And we take the children there a lot, especially when things start to flower and we're looking at all the insects, and then in the summertime we scythe. So there's a lovely local charity with adults with learning differences, and they come and help scythe. And I learned this at Brighton Permaculture Trust. So when we scythe the grass, we don't want it to go to waste. So we make these huge nests around the apple trees. We make sure there's a huge air gap so it's not touching the bark of the apple trees. But what's wonderful is it breaks down and it feeds the apple trees. So it keeps the moisture in the summer and yeah, keeps them well fed. And that's ours. I'm getting the hang of scything. And this was lovely. So at the end of every year, we have our Christmas party and the children decorate Christmas decorations and make them to hang on the tree of their favourite memories from Skool Beanz that year. And one of the children, their favourite memory was when we planted the apple trees. And this variety of apple is called the hidden rose. You can see it cut in half. And this, the children call the magic apple tree, because when you cut open the apple, it's this amazing rose pink pattern inside, and that's always lovely when you cut it open and show the children. They're just like, wow. And we do wassailing. So here in Somerset we have these funny little ceremonies over winter to bless the apple trees in the hope that they will have a good growing season ahead. And you ward off evil spirits by banging drums, or in our case, wooden plant labels with our watering cans. And you dress up and you drink apple juice or cider, and you pour it on the roots of the tree, and you hang bread on the tree for the robin. And this is just really fun to do with children. There's no right and wrong, just have fun. And it's such a good way of connecting to the land. And this is something I want to do more of this year with children. I went to the Oxford Real Farming Conference earlier this year, and they gave a really interesting talk about rituals and how our ancestors would often have ceremonies to give thanks to the land. And it's just a really good way of connecting to your garden. And I think the apples in our orchard, the apple trees, they know how much we love them. And it's almost like it's coming through because they're growing really well. And this is a whole plot dedicated to sunflowers and pumpkins. So we direct sow these sunflower seeds. So they're called Peredovic. They're only about 5 foot and they are for bird seed. They're those lovely black, rich in oil, the seeds. And then we plant pumpkin plants that we've grown in the polytunnel. We plant them in between. And this is what it looks like by the end of the summer. And pumpkin time is our best time of the year. So when we go and pick all the pumpkins and we get ready for our pumpkin party, the children make invitations, and then we dress up as our favorite veg and we have a guess the weight of the giant pumpkin. Our biggest yet was this one, 48.9 kilos. We haven't been able to beat that. That's 7.5 stone. And the children get prizes for the best dress. So we've got a bunch of grapes there. We've got a ladybird. This was amazing. Compost. I went as broccoli. And our pumpkin party last year we managed to have it on the allotment because the weather was fine, and we had storytelling around the fire. We have this amazing local storyteller who does nature stories. So I continue to teach gardening at the school on a Friday, and this was the garden area, and we just spruced it up a bit. And as you can see, yeah, bathtubs, just love them because it's an entire bed. So that's got radishes and rocket. And so we live close to Glastonbury Festival, the music festival, which I volunteer at every year, and made friends with this lovely man who gave us this giant bird's nest from the green fields. So it's fun things like this. And yeah, the children love it. We fill it with fresh straw each year. And 2023 was the release of Charles's children's gardening book. It's a great book and Skool Beanz features in it. And here in the UK, so we have the National Garden Scheme. So they open up people's gardens to raise money for wonderful charities in this country. And I really recommend anyone with a garden, even if it's at school, or to host an open day, because it's a wonderful way to engage with your community. And it's also something to aim for. So you think about having your open day and you want to get the garden ready for that special event. And we have music, so the children know as well, if you have lots of music in the garden, it helps the plants grow. So sometimes the children will come in with their harmonica, they'll go and practice in the secret den. So it's having lots of music, and these are friends of mine that live locally that come and play. And we have lovely volunteers. And so National Garden Scheme work closely with Gardeners World, and I didn't realise this. So they recommended us, and we were on Gardeners World in 2023. And then Charles came to film in the summer that year. And then we created a children's garden at the Royal Bath and West Showground, which is near us, last year. And we basically, it was all the best bits from Skool Beanz that we had there. So we kind of recreated a mini Skool Beanz there, and we won gold. And lots of local artists in our town, I worked very closely with them. So as well as the children decorating, like they did on all the signs, it's really lovely to get professional artists in as well. And it was lovely to welcome the children to the garden, the show garden. They gave their seal of approval. No Dig and Natter volunteer group. So every Thursday morning, 10 till 1, this wonderful group come and help me. I say it's like the exotic Marigold Hotel of volunteering. And they help me with all the jobs that, as I said before, that I wouldn't do with the children. And we get loads done, and we put the world to right, and we have a good natter, and we eat a lot of cake. And there's a lovely lady that lives opposite Skool Beanz, and she looks out at our garden, and she entered this in a local art exhibition. They asked for people to embroider a little square it was called In Stitches, so something that had them in stitches. And she said, watching Skool Beanz local allotment children's gardening club full of cheeky antics, giant rhubarb umbrellas, and armfuls of weird and wonderful vegetables makes me laugh and smile, a huge therapeutic tonic. So this children's garden, it's not just benefiting the children, it's benefiting the elderly residents that live opposite and the parents that walk through to drop their children off at the school, and just the whole village. And it's just amazing what a garden, the power of a garden, it's quite incredible. And one of my friends, a local artist, he's a driftwood artist called Dan Wakeman. He often needs, he said, can I leave my pieces in your garden because I don't have anywhere to put them? I was like, yes, can they stay forever? So this incredible driftwood seat and Highland cow, I'm hoping that they'll stay. So what's next? So at the moment, this is what the plots next door look like. And yes, we are doubling in size, but actually just before Christmas, I got an email from the council saying that they're going to sell all of the land that Skool Beanz is on, the entire allotment site. So I had a bit of a meltdown because I thought they would sell to property developers and what would we do? But no, they're going to hand the land over to our parish council, which is the small village council. And they have actually asked me if I could manage the whole site. So it's the best news ever. It means we can expand. And then we're also going to turn some of the plots into smaller community allotments for anyone that wants an allotment. So it means we can have an area where we cook food with the children and eat it on site. We want to build a pizza oven. We want a proper fire pit so we can do more storytelling around the fire. We're building a compost loo at the moment. We really want to get funding for a shipping container that we could have a log burner in so we could run the clubs all through the winter, because at the moment we don't run clubs in January. I want to have like a veranda on this shipping container with a sort of roof, and then we can turn it into a stage in the summer and do children's open air theatre. And then we want to have a sort of mowed meadow where we can offer children's yoga. And we want to have more children during term time, school buses of children coming. And I'm even thinking birthday parties on a Saturday afternoon. So yeah, you could have a ladybird themed birthday party or a carrot theme, or yeah, a nature-based themed party. So that's inviting more children in. So I run adult Skool Beanz day courses. So if you are relatively nearby, do come and spend the day at Skool Beanz, especially in the spring and summer, because it's so nice just to have you there for the whole day and you can really immerse yourself and see what we do. And these are lovely members who came to the course a couple of years ago. And I wanted to show you this. So this is, I was so amazed at the response of doing this talk. And I want to ask, like, what is the legacy that we want to leave to our young people? So this is a map of everyone that logged in to registered to watch this talk tonight. And it's quite amazing that people are in America and South America, and a lovely lady messaged earlier, thank you, from Argentina. And this is obviously the UK, but wouldn't it be wonderful? And I know some of you run gardens in primary schools, in secondary schools, that's amazing. We just want more children's learning gardens. And my dream is, just like forest schools, that we would have learning gardens all over the country. So if a parent was looking for a gardening club, they just Google and they're like, okay, yep, there's one there 10 miles away that I can take my child to, that we have, that they become the norm, because it's a worldwide issue. Children's learning gardens, they're not playgrounds, they are places that inspire and encourage the future generation, so that gardening isn't just for the dropout kids, it isn't just for the kids that didn't do very well in their grades. Like, we need people to think we need people that go into gardening as a career, and we need to give children the tools and share the skills so that they can be self-sufficient. They can grow their own food in times of trouble in the future. And I just wanted to show you, so I made this little sign, and I kind of go by this philosophy. So garden like you have one summer left. So back in March 2021, when I was just about to start the Skool Beanz Club the following month, I woke up one morning and I had the most excruciating headache. And I thought, oh no, and it didn't go away for 2 weeks. And I thought, oh no, has my cancer come back? And I ended up going to A&E, and I had scans, and I thought, oh no. And all I kept thinking was, I just want one more summer. I just want to get through the summer. I just want to see everything that my vision. I just want one more summer. Anyway, it turns out I didn't have cancer in my brain. I pulled a muscle and in my sleep, clenching my jaw, and I'm absolutely fine. But I go by that philosophy now. So garden like you have one summer left, just put everything into it. And I think in these difficult times, instead of feeling helpless, let's look at what we can do. And grassroots, it's all about grassroots and what we can do in our community, because it's this ripple effect. And I do have great hope for the future, and I don't have any time to waste, really. And I feel like I owe it to those friends of mine that sadly died from their breast cancer. I owe it to them to not take anything for granted and not waste a single moment. So thank you so much for listening and watching. And it's quite funny because I'm literally talking nonstop and I don't know if anybody's there. But I am now going to we'll do a Q&A. So what I'll do, so there's a few people that have sent in questions already, so I'll read those out. And then if anybody has a question, and I'll tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to stop sharing. I'll leave it on this for now. I'm going to read out these questions. Actually, no, I'm not. I'm going to go to my screen. So I'll stop sharing. So, and hopefully you can see me. Okay. So I'll read through these questions, and then when I finish these questions, if any of you guys have a question, so you go down to react, and there's a heart. You click on that and you click on raise hand if you have a question after I've finished these ones. Or if you don't want to speak, you can write a question in the chat. But I'm just going to go through these questions that got sent in earlier. So someone has said water butts and risk assessments in terms of stagnation, temperature, bacteria. If you go on the Royal Horticultural Society website, they are amazing. Their RHS campaign for school gardens, they've got so many resources. They've got a risk assessment on there that you can download. So as I said before, with going through the ground rules with the children, so before the children arrive, I always walk around the garden and check, for any risks. So with the water butts, because they're constantly filling up, we're constantly emptying them. The children know that they're not to drink that water, and the children know, after they've been in the garden, when they go home, they go and wash their hands. If you've got water butts, like a sort of bin, we never leave the lid on. No, I would recommend leaving the lid on, because bumblebees and things could die. But obviously give them a good clean at least once a year. So give it a good scrub. But I wouldn't, that's as long as you're being careful that way, and you're doing your risk assessments, then I think that's absolutely fine. Next one, could you chat about finding an insurance provider who doesn't restrict activity options? So you need public liability insurance. I just found a local insurance broker and explained to him what I was doing at Skool Beanz, how, it's a community garden, it's a children's garden, what activities we're doing, and he sorted it all out for me. And I think it's about £240 a year, and that covers that all. So find your local insurance broker. Good plants for kids to sow for harvesting before the summer holidays for the school allotment. So if can you see this? I'm hoping you can see my upper bit. Oh yeah, so I can see myself now. So this is the sewing calendar that Charles brings out. So I use this religiously. It's got all the sewing dates. And if you go, so he says to start sewing in February. So 13th of February, start sowing broad beans, and then you've got onions, kohlrabi, and then in March, there's things like you've got beetroot and spring cabbages, cauliflowers, and peas. So if you start sowing in February, March, and April, so like courgettes, you will be picking in June, July before the children break up. And then more, the things that you're sowing in April, like sweet corn, you'll be picking those when the children come back from the summer holidays, and autumn raspberries galore when they come back. So I hope that is helpful. Next one, what's the best way to rally volunteers? So just make leaflets, posters. So I've got a Canva account, so they're really great for making nice leaflets. I went on the local radio to advertise volunteering. I do talks like this to local gardening clubs, and then say anyone that wants to sign up to volunteer after, in local villages, notice boards, put things up. So yeah, Facebook groups, just spread the word any way you can. How do you grow engagement and spread the word? Very similar. So for you guys, for broader worldwide, obviously Instagram and Facebook is good, but for locally, so contacting local schools. I'm actually this year gonna all the local schools to me, I'm actually going to offer to come in and do a talk about Skool Beanz to the children, and maybe even offer some workshops in the schools, and then hopefully get a relationship with the local schools, and then they can bring the children to Skool Beanz. I have actually got 2 coach loads of children coming in May to Skool Beanz. Well, 1 coach load at a time. We're going to split them into 3 groups. There's 25 children. We'll split them into 3 groups. But because I teach gardening at the school opposite every Friday, I have a really good connection there with the children and the parents. So it's, getting a good relationship with nearby schools. I think that's all of those questions. So if anybody would like to ask a question now, click on the little heart button and raise a hand, or I'll just look at the chat. Thank you. I've literally talked your ears off, so you probably don't have any questions. But if you want to stay in touch, if you haven't already, sign up to the Skool Beanz. Oh, actually, we've got questions coming in. Hang on a minute. Okay, what age groups are they? Okay, thank you. Your questions are coming in now. Okay, so what age groups are they? So age 4 up to 13 is what we do at Skool Beanz. The reason I start at 4, if they're any younger, so from age 4, children can take direction. So if you tell them to do a job, they'll listen and they can do it. Any younger, then toddlers are they're not really that engaged. They're more sort of sensory, and I am going to start a mother and toddler morning 1 day a week, but I just think 4 is that wonderful age where they can take direction and they can follow the big kids. So 4 up to 13. When the children get to 13, I don't then say, oh, you can never come back. Often they'll children become teenagers, they want to go and do stuff with their friends, but often the children will come back and help me as a helper. So I've got one boy doing his Duke of Edinburgh, and he's a great gardener. He's now my helper. Another girl, she's a teenager doing her GCSEs. She wants to be a vet, and she's come back to help because it looks really good on her application to uni courses when she's older. So there's always the door is always open for the older children. They can keep coming if they want to. So what does a typical session look like, please? Okay, so we start at 10 a.m. on a Saturday, and we sit and have our little meeting. Then the children go off and do their jobs. So things like in the summer, they'll be picking courgettes, they'll be feeding the birds. There'll be some children, if I say, right, you need to clear that veg bed of veg. So if if the broccoli plants need to be taken up out the bed, I'll give the children a pruning saw and they'll be cutting the broccoli instead of digging it out, because we don't dig. Then there'll be decorating tin can vases with acrylic pens and going to pick loads of dahlias. And then halfway at 11 a.m. we have our break time, so the children get their snacks and we'll sit in the bird's nest or in the quiet wildlife garden and we'll play a little game. Normally it's who am I, so one of the children has to be a bug or a vegetable or a flower that you would find on the allotment, and we have to guess what they are. And then the second activity, we'll maybe all come together and do a craft. So sometimes I'll get there's a lady that comes in and does willow weaving with the children, so they'll have a go at that. And yeah, there's always so much to do. And then normally right at the end of the session, I let the children have free time. So then they'll go and they can hang out in the secret den, and yeah. So that's kind of like an average 2-hour session. And after school club, an hour, that does go super quick. So once again, they pick and choose what they want to do. We'll have a little art activity. I hope that helps. What do you do for hand washing on site? So we I do have wet wipes. We are going to try and sort out water. We want to have a big sink with a water container, like a foot pump thing, because we don't have a water supply on site. We often will get a watering can with water, and if the children got really dirty hands, we wash it over a bucket. But I often say to the children, you're not putting your hands in your mouth. And yeah, so far, touch wood. But we do definitely want to get a sink and have like a foot pump where the children can wash with natural soap. So that's what we intend to do. Do you mind me asking if you're paid to teach gardening at school? So incredible that the school are open to that, and it's something I'd really like to explore with my children's primary. Yes, they do pay me. So I work from 12:45 till 4:30. So I run 4 back-to-back gardening sessions in school and an hour after school club after. And some of those groups I bring to the allotment with some of the teachers, and then after school club they always come to the allotment. Or sometimes we stay in school and we do the gardening area in school. And yeah, I'm paid what a teaching assistant would be paid per hour. But as I say, it's really not for the money. It's such a good connection being a part of the school. So it's really important that I continue that. Why did you pick to be a CIC, and are there pluses and minuses of that model? So I was always advised when I did the diploma that a CIC is the best way forward, because obviously it's a not-for-profit, so anything we make goes back into the business, and we can also run as a business. So I do charge parents to send the children, so it's £10 for 2 hours, £6 for 1 hour, but children on free school meals do come for free. And obviously I charge for the adult courses, and we're going to be offering more sessions and having schools come and visit. So money is trickling in. So that's why we're a CIC, because charity, I get the impression you're constantly having to apply for funding. You'll not believe this, but the only funding we've ever got is £3,000 for a compost toilet from the NGS. I think we did a crowdfunder, we got £900 a few years ago. I've not really paid myself for the past few years. I do, at the moment, I'm getting by because I do a lot of gardening talks and they pay me. But when you're starting any business, you don't really make money the first few years because I'm still paying for infrastructure and I just haven't had the time to apply for funding. But it's a fine art applying for funding. But you can obviously apply for funding as well as charge and um, run it as a business as well. What have been some of the biggest mistakes, learning moments that you've experienced as a grower and as a teacher? Oh, that's a really good question that I feel like I'd need to go away and think about. The biggest mistakes, learning. Oh, I mean, it's funny stuff like, I'll say, yeah, go and pick the dahlias, but because I haven't explained properly, you'll get a child that's like, okay, and then literally goes and chops off every single head of all the flowers, and then you're like, no, and then I'm like, well, it's because I haven't explained it properly, so that's my fault. And then when I said to the children, oh, just just pick some kale, and then I sort of turned away, looked back, and they had literally taken every single leaf of every single kale plant. Literally all that was left was just like, and that would have given us kale, for another 5 months or something through the winter. And it was like, no. And then it was kind of funny because it was like, I didn't teach them properly. So it's things like that. So yeah, learning moments that you've experienced as a grower and as a teacher. Yeah, I'm always learning. And just like any teaching, you can have sessions where you're just like, oh, that went terribly. And then others when you're just like, oh, that went so well. So yeah. Um, how many sessions does a given child generally sign up for? Do they always get the opportunity to harvest and taste the food they have grown? So our after school clubs at the moment kind of go with the terms. So to make it more affordable for parents as well, I kind of do the blocks of like 6. So they'll book 6 and then, they'll rebook. I'm saying for the Saturday club, if you book 6 sessions, you get £5 off because you kind of want children to keep coming. But I've got some children that have been coming now. This will be their third or fourth year, third year. And they've been coming since they were 4 and they are so good at, yeah, and they're such natural little gardeners and yeah, so they are definitely they're seeing all the seasons. So I would encourage, yeah, it's so good for the children to come as much as possible because yeah, they're seeing that whole cycle of the plants, especially the children in school, they're seeing that as well. Is it open access when there is a group there? Wondering if you have a problem with vandalism. So a few years ago, we did have a problem. So we didn't have our shed. We used to keep our umbrellas and chairs folded up under a table in the polytunnel. Some, I think, naughty teenagers came in the evening, smashed it up, smashed a few things up, and we found them over on the wreck. But there's always a reason for vandalism, and you never know what's going on in that young person's life. And I think it's always good to make friends with anyone you think is maybe causing that vandalism because they're going through tough stuff. And since, the whole village knows what we do and touch wood, so we've had our little shed that we padlock and we haven't had any problems since. It's almost like everyone appreciates it being there. And so, yeah. How many children can you look after at one time, please? So I say up to 12 children in our in a group, and it's always me and one other adult. And sometimes mums want to stay and older children help. If you look at the NSPCC website, they've got guidance on ratios for children, but 2 adults with 12 children works really well. I don't really have more than 12 children because we're only relatively small, but as we get bigger, we'll have bigger groups and we'll divide them into groups of 10. Do you feed the children on site? Do they bring snacks? So yeah, the children do bring snacks, but as I said, we want to have our pizza oven. This year, we really want to prepare and cook the food with the children on site, because it would be really nice if we were all eating the same thing. So that's what I would love to do. And the children do eat a lot anyway on site. So anything that's ready, they'll be eating carrots and eating sweet corn and eating raspberries, and they'll pick it all and then they can eat it in the break as well. And they're always eating salad leaves and spinach. So do I do a lesson? Yeah, I mean, as I say, it's all about having fun. I'm not like, oh, they've got to learn this, they've got to learn that. Because I look at when I worked for Charles, and you just learn through osmosis, just from, you know, I mean, obviously I was working for him and he was telling me jobs to do, but the children, it's like the garden dictates what needs to be done. So we're doing what needs to be done. We're not really doing things for the sake of it. Obviously, the art activities are, because they're really fun. Um, so the garden guides us, if that makes sense. Do you need DBS and parental permission forms? Yes. So I have got a DBS check for Skool Beanz and for the school that I teach at opposite. And yes, I get forms that the parents sign. And obviously, if a child has allergies, or you obviously need to know. Also, permission for taking photos, because obviously I've shown you photos tonight. And I have done my pediatric first aid training. So that's really important to have a trained first aider on site as well at all times. How can we link learning gardens together? Can we have a connection with other kids' allotments? Long-term idea, of course. So I don't know if any of you have heard of the Future Gardeners Forum. So that is something that Charles Dowding, if you go on his website, if you type in Future Gardeners Forum, I'm hoping I can send you an email after this chat with lots of links that I recommend. So he is doing that very thing. So there's a map on his website, and you can upload your school garden, your children's allotment on that map. And so you can actually see who you're near. And Charles does a monthly newsletter. I also do a monthly newsletter. So if you sign up on our Skool Beanz website, and that's, people are writing in his newsletter about their gardens. And so, yeah, Future Gardeners Forum is a great platform for bringing us all together. Can you please talk a bit more about funding costs, whether you can pay yourself enough to cover bills, etc.? So I have a very patient husband at the moment. I'm literally, and I'm in a very fortunate position. So we live in the annex next door to my very kind mother-in-law, and so I'm paying rent, but it's very affordable. But my aim is to make this pay me a wage, and that's what's happening this year. So talk a bit more about funding. I mean, as you can see, we're so eligible for funding. It's just sitting down and applying. But it's also about it's like a monoculture field. If you just got one thing that you're selling, it's pretty tricky. Whereas if we're diverse, so if I've got, all these different clubs, and then I've got schools bringing children, we've got birthday parties, I'm running adult courses, I'm doing talks. It's like, I want to write a book. It's finding all these different extra avenues of bringing money in, as well as applying for funding. Also, it'd be really good to link with local doctors, so GPs, so social prescribing. So if children are struggling, it would be so good to, if they were recommended to come to Skool Beanz, a garden like Skool Beanz. So there's lots of avenues that we could follow up. I have a question about funding to pay people. It seems to be easier to find funding for equipment than people's time. Any advice? Much appreciated. Yeah, there are, like, we in Somerset have a community fund, and you can apply for that fund, say £5,000 to pay for staff. So there are some pots of funding that you can apply to pay for staff. And I would like to pay my staff £15 an hour, ideally. Thank you. Lots lovely comments. Thank you very much. Any recommendations for quality waterproof children's gloves? So I do love the gardening gloves that have got like the rubbery bits on the hand bit. Those seem to be the best ones, instead of just the fabric-y ones. So I don't know where we get donated quite a few things like that. I think there's a website that is like children's gardening website that you can buy things, and I think somebody bought us gloves from there. In terms of tools, we just use tiny trowels and little dibbers to dib holes. I never let the children use secateurs. Never, not even my secateurs, because what happens if a child takes a secateur and then I get distracted by another child, and then that child has chopped their finger off? So it's just a no-go. The only tool, sharp tool I let them use is a pruning saw, but it's not really that sharp. It's more like is that a word? Is it serrated, but it's kind of, they couldn't chop their finger off with it. So that's what I let them use. But we don't really use that many tools. Oh yeah, and children's scissors, which are a bit tricky to cut things with, but they can cut dahlia stems, and so that, yeah, children's scissors. Will this recording be available for later reference? Yes, I hope so. So we're recording now, and I'm hoping I can send it to you all. What has been your most embarrassing moment in front of the kids? Oh, probably if I said something rude, like slipped out a rude word or something. What's been embarrassing? I am quite embarrassing. I think the children think I'm a bit tragic because I get so excited over compost, and I think they're like, you need to get a life. That's probably that's probably the most embarrassing thing. So do the children plan or design where to plant? Yes, so we have raised beds at the front of the garden, and a couple of times, a couple of summers, I've said to the children, right, we'll split them into groups. This is your raised bed, and you can do whatever you want in there. And so they have to choose their seeds and the veg. So I'll show them, and they'll be like, yep, we want to grow that, we want to grow that. So that's a really nice idea. And Thrive, the gardening charity who are based in Reading, they do that. They have 1 meter by 1 meter beds allocated to their individual clients that come, and they're like, right, you can do whatever you want in that bed. So you could even have a train track if you want in amongst the plants that you grow. So yeah, if you've got the space, that's a lovely idea. Is there a toilet nearby that the children can use? So that's why we are building our compost toilet at the moment. It's going to be a deluxe, really nice compost loo. So what we've been doing so far is wild wheeze in the child is on their own doing a wild wee in the secret den, and then they get a watering can and pour where they've been. The children know that we don't have a toilet, so they'll do a number 2 before they come. But we're going to have a compost loo literally when we start back in a few weeks. Do you make a plan what you are teaching about? As I say, so I walk around the garden and I'll write down what needs doing. We'll sometimes have a theme. So if it's one of the children, there was one little girl, her favorite insect is a woodlouse. So we had a woodlouse themed birthday party for her because she comes every week. And that was great because we learned all about woodlouse. We went looking for them. We made a cardboard woodlouse to take home. So yeah, you can definitely have themes. I have a plan. I want to make a booklet that the children keep, and then on each page is every single vegetable. So they've got to tick and write that they've sowed that veg, they've planted it, they've harvested it, they've done everything. And same with, have you found a earwig? And every single page. And then when it's all done, they get, well, when each page is completed, they'll get like a badge or something. So yeah, that's in pipeline. Somebody's just said B&Q do amazing kids gloves for only £2. How do I fit it all in? I mean, this is literally my life. Our garden got some money through the co-op shop supporting the local charities. Also got a free shed and some compost through Wix Builders. They have a community donations, but hidden on website. That's good advice. So a lot of retailers like those, if they have broken bags of compost, yeah, you can get those, they'll give those to you. Would you recommend raised beds over ground level beds like you had initially? So the thing with raised beds, you got to fill them full, 3/4 full with clay, heavy clay soil, because if you don't, they're just going to keep sinking, and then you're having to add more compost, which costs money and is a faff. Also in the summer, if we do have a real heat wave, which we probably will do soon, they dry out because you're watering them and the water just disappears. Also, slugs hide in the wood of the raised beds. So if obviously raised beds are good if people don't want to bend, but I think having both, when you're growing straight into the ground, they grow so much better because you've got less places for the slugs to hide, and it holds the water much better. When do you start back, and what does your first session back look like? So 15th of February is our first Saturday session back, and we will dedicate that session to getting ready for our wassailing. So 10 till 12, our gardening session, we will be making willow crowns, learning all about wassailing, and then when the parents pick the children up at 12, we'll then walk over to the orchard and we'll have our little wassailing ceremony. So it's a good way to kickstart the year ahead. Would you consider doing a wellness area for the children? That's a very good question, Bonnie. So we are going to have our mowed meadow lawn area where I really want to do children's yoga in the summer. But yes, I mean, the quiet wildlife garden is a sort of place where children can chill out. But yeah, that's a very good question. Doing more things like more, especially medicine, so growing specific herbs that the children, then we can make tea. The children know about lavender. We grow a lot of lavender, so for relaxing, and lavender bags, and so yeah, there's lots we could do for that. Would you recommend having the RHS level 2 in terms of attracting parents, schools, or if you're a keen hobby gardener, is that enough? I mean, RHS, saying RHS for people that aren't into gardening, they kind of think, oh yes, you've got RHS, that's really good to have under your belt. But I got, if not more, so much more out of working for Charles and working at the flower farm, Blackshed Flower Farm, for 3 months, and working alongside someone who is really knowledgeable is just as valuable as qualification. I mean, the school didn't mind that. I don't think they would mind if I didn't have an RHS level. But it's swings and roundabouts. I just think getting as much experience as possible with experienced people is just as valuable, if not more valuable. Thank you. Have you considered a pond for biodiversity? So we do have a tiny pond, and yes, we're thinking of a bigger pond, but obviously when you've got a bigger pond, you've got to have it completely fenced all the way around because it is a hazard for little ones falling in and having accidents. So, but yes, definitely. Local B&Q also do a reuse, recycle, which you can contact, and they offer leftover paint tools. Yeah, that's really good advice. When you initially begin with no dig, did you do cardboard, compost, mulch? We have a grassy area on an old school field that I want to grow on, but don't want to dig up the grass. So yeah, what you want to do if there's grass, you want to mow it as short as possible, even almost get it bald, short as possible, then put the cardboard on. Make sure you take all the plastic tape off, make sure the cardboard is non-shiny, and make sure there's no gaps, because any gaps, the grass will grow through the gaps when they see light. So then, yeah, you put your layer of cardboard. You want your initial layer, I mean, it's less than 6 inches thick. You sort of tread it down, and then you'll want to plant little plug plants in it. I mean, if you need to dig a hole for a tree, you would cut round the cardboard, you would dig a big hole for the tree, and then you'd put it back. But yeah, that's how you would do it. I've been considering doing the Thrive Therapeutic Horticulture course. Did you find it helpful? Yes, definitely. So I think it's 2 years now, the Social and Therapeutic Horticultural Diploma. Um, it's it's a growing industry now. It's completely recognized, the power of therapeutic horticulture, and there are different areas that you can work in. They also do day courses, Thrive, and I have done a couple of their day courses as well, and yeah, really recommend them. Right. I think yes, I'm going to wrap things up now. Right. Is the Thrive course online, or does it have to be in person? So when I did the diploma, it was a few days. I would go to Coventry Uni for a few days a month or every other month. And then we would do all of the lectures and things were in person, but then that was before COVID. But I think it's, especially the day courses at Thrive, it's definitely, you want to be there because you want to be on site to see everything they do. But I'm sure they do some online ones as well. Thank you so much. Yes, thank you. So I'm going to read back through all your messages. Thank you so much. So it's 20 to 9 now. And good luck, everybody. You're here because you're all doing wonderful things with your children, or teaching children, or you've got good ideas. And just, if you've got an idea, just go with it. And thank you very much. And I'm thinking of maybe doing another one of these in a few months' time, but yeah, but then yeah, and just email me if you've got any more queries, or message. Thank you very much. Thank you. Someone said another one. Yes, please. Okay, I'll try. I'll think of the next one. And I am thinking I've got to create an online course as well. But yeah, if you can come, if you want to come for the day at Skool Beanz, do sign up for the adult course, because being there in person is, yeah, is definitely worth it. Thank you very much. Thank you. Right. And I am going to log out. But yes, you can go now. You don't have to stay and give up any more time. But I will leave this running. Thank you very much. Bye. And this is very exciting, seeing all these different people all over the world. Thank you. This is really lovely reading your messages. Thank you. And good luck, everybody.